Wrong button. Welcome to the stream of horror that we watch haunting things. Yes, okay. So now number one is Mr. Ballin, and I don't know if you guys heard Mr. Ballin before, but Mr. Ballin is another horror YouTuber that he tells horror stories. And yes, the next one, Nuke Top 5, this is where the real haunting things happen. Hope you're ready for the more scarier ones. And also, I know it's mature, so you guys know that, so it's mature. And now, let's watch Mr. Ballin.
Today's story has a very distressing and graphic plot twist at the end, and so viewer discretion is advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once or twice every week. So if that's of interest to you, please tell the like button you're going to upload on your YouTube channel 3, 4, even 5 times every week, and then knock it down to 3 or 4 times a week, and then 2 or 3 times a week.
Here's your warning right here.
Morgantown, West Virginia is this beautiful place nestled at the bottom of this huge mountain range called the Green Mountains. It is a big-time college town as the famous West Virginia University is located there. And so during the school year, the town is full of young people. And during the football season, the town is absolutely buzzing with excitement. But the college is not the only reason people live in Morgantown. Lots of families choose to live there because there's so much to do year-round. Also, it's relatively safe, and in general, it's an up-and-coming place with new shops and restaurants and museums popping up every single year. But despite all of that, Morgantown is also known for something absolutely terrible, and that is the story of Skylar Neese. In 2012, 16-year-old Skylar Neese was a sophomore in high school in Morgantown, West Virginia. She was a straight-A student, and she worked part-time at a Wendy's, which is a fast food restaurant chain, and by all accounts, she was extremely well-liked by her peers, her co-workers, and had many, many friends. She was the only child of Mary and David Neese, and they absolutely adored her. David, in particular, who was this big, burly man's man, he said that he spoiled his daughter rotten. The parents would say their daughter was full of love and life, and she was fiercely loyal, and at times, she could be absolutely hilarious. One of Dave's fondest memories is when Skylar was a very young girl, he was home taking care of her by himself. And that morning, as he's looking after her, she asks him if he will participate in one of her trademark tea parties. And so David, the ever-dutiful father, walks over and says, "Of course, I'll participate in your tea party." And he sits down in this little tiny pink chair, and his daughter, who's got her ballerina tutu on, she's across the table and she's all smiles, and she sits down in her little pink chair, and she hands him this little plastic teacup. And so he takes the teacup and he sees there's water already inside of it, and so he sips the tea inside of the cup, and he says, "Oh, it's so good, honey, you did such a good job brewing this tea." And Skylar is just blushing. She is so happy and so thrilled that he liked the tea. Later that night, when Mary came home from work, she goes to her husband, Dave, and says, "Hey, how did it go? How was it looking after Skylar today?" And Dave would tell her about all the things they did, including their big tea party. And he would tell Mary that, this time she actually put water inside of the teacup, so it was actually like a real tea party. And Mary stops him and goes, "Dave, Skylar's not tall enough to reach the faucet." how could she have put water inside of those cups? And it turned out Skylar was using toilet water to fill the teacups. Fast forward to 2012, and on the night of July 5th, 16-year-old Skylar Neese had just finished a night shift at the Wendy's restaurant, and she just got home. She walks through the front door of her family's apartment, and as soon as she gets inside, she tells her parents she's really tired, she wants to go to bed. And so she hugged both of her parents, she told them that she loved them, and then Mary and Dave watched their daughter walk down the first floor hallway, and then they watched her open her bedroom door, go inside, and shut it behind her. The following morning, Mary and Dave both had to work, so they were up early, and Skylar was not up. She was still in her bedroom, her door was still shut, and so they assumed she was just going to sleep in. And so Mary and Dave, they make breakfast, they're chatting, they're kind of doing their morning routine, and then when it was time to go to work, they decided, let's not bother Skylar, she worked late last night, let her sleep in. And so the parents, they leave without seeing or talking to their daughter. Later that afternoon, Dave would come home early from work, and he gets to the apartment, he goes inside, and it's quiet. Now, Mary was still at work, but Skylar at this point really should not have been asleep. It's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so he's thinking, she's got to be up around here somewhere. And so he yells out to his daughter, hey, I'm home. Where are you? What are you up to? But there was no response. It was just silent. And so he walked down the first floor hallway towards his daughter's bedroom, and he saw the door was still shut. Now, she only kept that door shut when she was sleeping. And so he's thinking, okay, I guess she must still be asleep. This is really late in the afternoon. So, I'm going to knock on the door and see if she's okay. And so he knocks on the door and says, hey, Sky, it's late in the afternoon. You got to get up. But there was no answer. And when he listened to the door, there was no noise coming from the bedroom. And so he thought that was pretty weird. And so he knocked a few more times. He yelled out a few more times. And when there was no response, no answer, no sound, he opened the door up.
Are you kidding me?
And when he looked inside, Skylar was not in there. Now, Dave was thinking to himself, I don't think my daughter told me that she would be gone today, or at least not right now. And he's trying to think, did she say something? Was she meeting someone today? And he couldn't think of it. And so he just pulled his phone out and he called his daughter, but she didn't pick up. So he called his wife, Mary, and Mary's at work, and Mary picks up, and Dave asked her, hey, have you seen Skylar, or do you know where she is right now? And she would say, no, I don't know where she is. Maybe she's out with one of her friends. And so after Dave hung up the phone with his wife, he wound up calling one of Skylar's very closest friends. Her name was Sheila, and she had known Skylar since they were in second grade. They were practically inseparable, and he had a good relationship with Sheila. And so he just calls Sheila, and he says, hey, I haven't seen Skylar. She's gone right now. Do you know where she is? And Sheila would say, no, I'm sorry, I don't, but I did talk to her last night, but, there was nothing unusual about our interaction. It was just normal texting about, normal stuff. And so Dave said, okay, thank you. Well, if you could, can you please try to get in touch with Skylar? And if you do get in touch with her, please tell her to get in touch with us. Or if you hear anything about her, please just let me know. After Dave hung up the phone with Sheila, he kind of stopped and just looked around his daughter's bedroom and thought, maybe there's some clue in here about where she's gone. And at first glance, really nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But when he walked around her bed and was looking inside of her closet, he saw the mesh screen that should have been mounted on the outside of her window was in her closet. And he's thinking, why is that in there? There's no reason for it to be in the closet. And so instinctively, he just turns around and walks over to the window that this screen is supposed to be on. And when he looks down at the bottom of the window, he sees it's open. Barely, just enough where you could maybe get your fingernails underneath the window and pry it open. And so Dave reaches down and opens this window all the way. And because there was no screen on this window, he just stuck his head all the way out the window. So his head is outside of the apartment. He's just kind of looking around, looking for some explanation of why this screen had been removed and put in her closet. And he got his explanation when he looked straight down and saw on the grass outside, just several feet below this window, because this is a first floor window, there was a bench, and the bench clearly had been moved there recently. For Dave, even though he had never heard of his daughter sneaking out of the house before and really didn't think that was something she would do, he's looking around thinking, okay, the evidence in her room and now outside of her room really indicates that that is exactly what she must have done the night before. She must have snuck out. But as he's processing this, he's also thinking, okay, well, if she snuck out of the house last night and then, snuck back into her room, why didn't she replace the screen on the window? And why didn't she close the window all the way? And then this morning, before she left to go wherever she went, why didn't she go outside and move the bench from under her window back to where it was supposed to go to avoid suspicion? Why didn't she do that? And then it dawns on him that his daughter must have snuck out the night before, but not come back yet. She's still out wherever she went. Dave was very concerned. However, he's thinking maybe there's a better explanation. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. Maybe she didn't sneak out. And so he calls his wife to kind of just talk with her and figure out what they should do. And they decide, you know what, this is concerning, but let's just give her a couple of hours to turn back up again. I'm sure she's fine. And so they begin to wait. And then at 4 p.m. that evening, Wendy's, the restaurant where Skylar worked, called Dave and said, hey, have you seen Skylar? She was supposed to work today and she didn't show up. She didn't call. It's very unlike her. What's going on? And this was the tipping point. Dave and Mary knew something had to be wrong, and so Dave called the police.
Long County 911, do you have an emergency?
I have a 16-year-old daughter who apparently snuck out of her room last night. She has not been home, hasn't went to work, can't get a hold of her from any of her friends. I am scared to death.
Has she done this before?
No.
After Dave got off the phone, he and his wife began kind of frantically figuring out what they should do. While the police are out looking, should we go out and look too? Or should we stay here in case she comes home and, maybe she's hurt. Maybe we can help her if she gets here. And so they're having this really difficult and stressful conversation when Mary's phone rings and it's Sheila. And so Mary immediately answers it, hoping for some good news about her daughter.
Really, again?
But Sheila asks Mary right away, hey, has Skylar come home yet? And Mary says, no, she hasn't. And in fact, we just got off the phone with the police because this doesn't make sense. Something's wrong and we're getting the police involved. And so when Sheila hears this, she kind of takes a deep breath. And then after a little bit of a hesitation, she says, Mary, I've got to tell you the truth about last night. She would go on to explain that the night before, Skylar had snuck out of the house, and so had she, along with their other very close friend named Rachel. And Rachel was someone that Mary and Dave also knew very, very well. The three girls were kind of like best friends and totally inseparable. And so Sheila said the three of them snuck out, and in fact, they did this a lot, and they would drive around town and smoke marijuana together. But this was not the big reveal. Despite this being fairly shocking to Mary and Dave, this was not the big reveal. The big reveal was that when they went out and snuck out of their houses and smoked weed together, they would make sure they never drove their car. Whoever was driving would never drive directly in front of any of their houses because they were concerned that the noise from the car could wake up parents and then they'd get caught. And so the way they would do it is after they snuck out of their house, they would walk a block or two away from their house and then they would call or text the other two and they'd get picked up and they'd go do their thing. And then when they got dropped off, they would get dropped off a block or two away from their home and then walk the rest of the way. And so Sheila told Mary that last night, like so many other nights, she dropped Skylar off about a block away from their apartment, and then Sheila and Rachel drove off. So they did not actually see Skylar enter her apartment. So they don't know for sure if she actually made it home okay. And so this was obviously horrifying for Mary and Dave to hear because it totally opened the door for their daughter to have been abducted during this walk from the drop-off point back to her apartment. And the street she was on was not well lit. It's the middle of the night. It's dark. She's potentially high on marijuana. And so it seemed like that was a very realistic thing that could have happened, as horrifying as it sounded. And so after Mary got off the phone with Sheila, she called the police and she updated them about what Sheila had told her. And then Mary and Dave met up with Sheila and Sheila's mother and began searching the immediate area around their apartment in hopes that maybe, she fell somewhere and she's trapped and she just needs to be picked up or helped in some way. But after searching for several hours and knocking on dozens and dozens of doors, nobody saw anything, nobody knew anything, there was no sign of Skylar. And so as this group is totally down, they don't know what to do, they feel totally helpless, they know the police are out looking for Skylar, but they want to do something and they don't know what to do. And that's when Mary remembers there is a security camera on the outside of their apartment building that is looking down at the road. And so right away, the four of them literally run back to the apartment building. They go inside, they find the security manager, they explain the situation, and sure enough, he pulls up the footage from the night before, and the footage they see doesn't make sense. Sheila had dropped Skylar off on that corner, kind of out of view of the camera, at around midnight. But at 12:30, so 30 minutes after she's been dropped off, you see this unknown kind of generic looking car pull up right in front of the apartment complex. And then Skylar comes running across the lawn, goes right up to the car, opens the back door, hops in the back seat, shuts it, and the car drives off. Even though this did not solve the mystery of where their daughter was, because they had no idea what car this was, who was driving it, or where they were going, Mary and Dave still felt relieved because from their perspective, it seemed like their daughter had willingly got into this vehicle. Whoever it was, whatever they were doing, she had gotten in on purpose, which meant she probably was not being abducted, which was their big fear. Over the next couple of days, the police analyzed this footage and tried to get information about this car, but the footage was so grainy, they couldn't do it. However, the police were telling Dave and Mary, hey guys, I'm sure Skylar is going to show up any day now. As much as you may not want to believe it, that your daughter is capable of running away, it is fairly common for teens to do that. They'll run away and then, a couple days later, they'll pop back up. And so I'm sure that's what's going on with Skylar. She chose to get in that car. And so I'm sure she will choose to get back in touch when she feels comfortable. So a couple of days go by and the parents haven't heard anything from their daughter. And then a couple of weeks go by, still nothing. And then a couple of months go by, still nothing. And this is all despite the fact that there is a massive search happening led by the police, and locals in Morgantown have put flyers up everywhere that have pictures of Skylar Neese's face everywhere in town and in neighboring towns. It was like you could not go 5 feet without being reminded that this girl is missing. Have you seen her? If you have, give us information. Despite the amount of publicity this case was getting, no one came forward with any meaningful information. It was like Skylar had just vanished and no one had a clue what happened to her. Her parents were obviously devastated that they had no idea what happened to her, but they were kind of holding on to this idea that, maybe she did run away and maybe she will eventually be in touch with us. But by December of that year, so 6 months after Skylar had gone missing, no one had heard from her, no one had seen her, no one had any idea where she was, there was no new leads. And so people were starting to feel less and less optimistic and the case was starting to kind of go cold. And then on December 12th, something totally unexpected happened that changed everything. On that night, Rachel, the other friend who had been there with Sheila and with Skylar on the night that Skylar had vanished, she has a full-blown nervous breakdown. In fact, it's so bad that she's screaming and running around and she's punching her family members, and her mom actually calls the police on her.
I have an issue with a 16-year-old daughter of mine. I can't control her anymore. She's screaming. She's running through the neighborhood. Give me the phone. No, this is over. This is over. Hurry up. Oh, God. She just gave me a block. Oh, God. Hurry up, please.
After this call was made, the police show up to Rachel's house and they take her away to a psychiatric hospital. And then several days later, when she was released from that hospital, she went straight to the Morgantown Police Department. She walked inside and said, I gotta get something off my chest about Skylar. Apparently, whatever it was that she had been keeping secret had just been too difficult to keep inside. It was quite literally driving her crazy. And so the police said, okay, great. And they brought her into an interview room. They sat down and they said, okay, what do you got for us? The following has been pulled from what Rachel told police.
Here's everything you need to start playing D&D online. First, a group of friends. A group of 4 to
Back on July 5th, 2012, Skylar came home from that night shift at Wendy's. She goes inside her family's apartment. She says goodnight to her mom and dad. She goes into her bedroom and she shuts the door, and she's laying on her bed. She's on her phone. She's not going to bed quite yet. And as she's laying there, she starts getting text messages from Rachel and also from Sheila asking her if she wants to sneak out that night. Now, Skylar didn't want to, and she said as much because she was actually hurting. She was mad at her two friends. According to some of her other friends that went to school with her and Rachel and Sheila, the three of them were totally inseparable, but lately, kind of the few months leading up to when she ultimately disappeared, there had been tension in their group. It seemed like Sheila and Rachel were getting very, very close and kind of pushing Skylar away, and Skylar was starting to pick up on it. It was little things, like Sheila and Rachel would show up to school in matching outfits, but they wouldn't tell Skylar beforehand, kind of leaving her out, or whenever they posted selfies of the three of of them, Skylar was always relegated to the back or kind of in some other way obscured to make sure she was not the focal point of the picture. It was just very obvious that they were deprioritizing Skylar, and it was really hurting Skylar's feelings. And so it seemed like her way of standing up to them and kind of telling them that she was upset was to turn down their offer of sneaking out and smoking weed with them. But over the next couple of hours, Skylar would eventually say, okay, fine, I'll come with you guys, I'll sneak out and we'll go smoke together. Just before 12:30 a.m. on July 6th, Skylar gets off of her bed, she walks over to her window, she lifts it up, and she pulls the screen off, and she walks over to her closet, she puts the screen in her closet and shuts the door to the closet, and then she walks back over to the window and crawls out and lowers herself down onto the grass below, and then she walks over and grabs the bench and slides it over and puts it right underneath her window, and then she stands on the bench and reaches up and pulls the window down so there's just a little crack left so she can get back inside, and then she just waited by the side of the apartment looking out towards the road, and right after 12:30, this car, the unknown car on the surveillance camera, pulls right in front of the apartment building, and Skylar runs over to it, opens up the back right door, and climbs inside. This unknown car was Sheila's car. Sheila was driving, and Rachel was in the front passenger seat. It would turn out Rachel and Sheila lied about basically everything, including what time they picked up Skylar. So the three girls, they drive away from Skylar's apartment, and Sheila hops on a highway and starts driving northwest. Now, the girls did not immediately start smoking inside of the car. They decided instead they would actually drive to a location, get out, and smoke there. And the place they decided on was a spot they had smoked at before. It was a known hangout spot for teenagers. It was located about 45 minutes away, just barely across the border into Pennsylvania. It was down this kind of old country road that nobody ever went on. And so Sheila drives the car 45 minutes. She crosses into Pennsylvania. She finds the turn onto this old road. They drive down it a little ways until they're pretty far away from the highway, at which point Sheila pulls off the road onto the grass, parks the car. The three girls get out and they walk past the car a little ways down the path to a clearing on the right. There was a hill that went up on the right, and they would kind of sit on this hill looking downhill, and that would be where they would smoke. And so the three girls, they sit down, they're all next to each other facing downhill. They're not facing each other. And Sheila, who is sitting all the way to the right with the car being over to the left, she pulls out the marijuana joint and she's about to light it, but she realizes she does not have a lighter. And so she asks Rachel and Skylar if they have a lighter, and they both pat themselves down. They're checking themselves. They don't have a lighter. And then Sheila says to Skylar, who's all the way to the left of the way they're sitting, so Skylar is closest to the car, she asks Skylar, hey, can you go in the car and get the lighter that I know is in there? And Skylar said, no problem. So Skylar, she stands up and she turns. Her back is to her two friends. And as soon as she starts walking, what she would have heard is the sound of her two friends standing up as well, and then loudly saying, 1, 2, 3. And on 3, Skylar would have felt two knives being plunged into her back by Rachel and by Sheila. In a panic, Skylar does not even turn around. She just starts taking off running towards the car, and she manages to run away from her attackers. But because of her grievous injuries in her back, she eventually slows down, at which point Sheila tackles her from behind. She gets her on the ground, she pins her on her back, and Sheila is trying to stab Skylar, but Skylar is doing her best to keep the knife off of her. But at some point, Rachel comes running up beside them, and between Rachel and Sheila, they managed to hold Skylar's hands down, at which point Sheila and Rachel began taking turns stabbing her in the chest and in the neck. The whole time Skylar is trying to defend herself, but it's impossible with these two on top of her. And at some point she just kind of gives up and she says, why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me? But they don't give her a reason. They just keep on going. And eventually Rachel stops stabbing Skylar, but Sheila doesn't. Sheila keeps on going until, quote, her neck stopped making gurgling sounds. And then once Skylar went still, Sheila stood up like it was nothing, and she and Rachel just walked away from her body back to the car. They went around to the trunk of the car, they opened it up, and inside was shovels, bleach, trash bags, rags. They had brought along a kill kit because they knew what they were going to do this night. And so they start by cleaning themselves off. They get the blood off of them and off of their weapons, and then they take the shovels and they walk a little ways off of the road, kind of into the woods, and they try to dig a grave, but it would turn out the ground was too hard. And so they abandon the grave idea and just grab Skylar's lifeless body and drag it just about 6 feet off of the road and kind of chuck it against a log. And then they threw boulders and sticks and anything they could on top of her body. They don't know if she's still alive at this point. So they're potentially dealing the fatal blow with these rocks and logs. They cover her up until she's totally obscured. And then the two girls just walk back up. They grab their shovels, they grab their rags, their bleach, they put it back in the trunk, they hop in their car, and they drive away. It would turn out Rachel and Sheila had been planning this for months. The reason?
What?
They didn't like Skylar anymore, and apparently it wasn't enough to just be mean to her and not include her in things. They actually needed to kill her. And so the entire night that they went out and snuck out, that was all planned. They knew Skylar did not want to come out and sneak out with them because they knew she was upset with them. And so they said whatever they had to say to convince her to leave her house and sneak out with them. And so she did. She snuck out. And when she got in that car, Sheila and Rachel had their knives already in their front pocket of their sweatshirt ready to go. And on their ride to this spot in Pennsylvania, Sheila and Rachel acted like, oh, let's just go to this spot and smoke. When in reality, this was planned too. They wanted to make sure they were far away from Morgantown when they killed Skylar. And so when they got there and they walked down to their spot to actually begin smoking, Sheila and Rachel had intentionally not brought lighters, and Sheila had left a lighter in the car specifically so she could ask Skylar to go get it. Because the plan was, as soon as Skylar gets up to get that lighter and her back is to us, Sheila and Rachel had promised each other that they would count to 3 and then attack her. Ultimately, Rachel would be sentenced to 30 years in prison, but she'll be eligible for parole in 2023. And Sheila would be sentenced to life in prison, but she would also be eligible for parole in 2028. During their trials, Rachel was very remorseful and even gave an apology to Skylar's parents during the sentencing phase. Sheila, on the other hand, smirked during her trial for most of the time. She was smiling and totally making light of it. She said she didn't do it. She was totally not remorseful, and she did not offer an apology to Skylar's parents. She did, however, leave an unbelievably cruel message on Twitter. In March of 2013, when the police came out and officially said, we have identified the remains in the forest in Pennsylvania as belonging to Skylar Neese, when that announcement was made, just a couple of days later, Sheila tweeted, we really did go on 3. Sheila was arrested 1 month later. So that's going to do it, guys. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please tell the like button. You're going to upload 3, 4, even 5 times a week on your YouTube channel, and then drop it down to 2 or 3 times a week, and then 1 or 2 times a week.
I'm not gonna lie, the first one was kind of sad, but also her friends are psychopaths. I'm surprisingly, I'm actually like a little upset because that's stupid. Who does that to their friends? Who does that?
Today's theme is very simple, scary stories. But before I get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please eat all of the like button's Oreos except for one and put it back in the pantry, and then also crumple all of their potato chips. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories.
Hell.
In 2010, an avid caver named Jeff decided to go to Madagascar to explore a natural cave shaft he had discovered years earlier. He arrived in country, he got a rental car, and he hired a guide to take him out to the area where he knew this cave was going to be. When he got out to that area, he used his notebook where he had taken notes the last time he was here, and he used that to find the opening to the cave. He paid the guide to stick around at the car while he went down and explored this cave. He assured him it was not going to be for a very long time. The shaft was approximately 50 meters deep and 1 meter across, so it's pretty narrow, and the first 20 meters of the descent are on a bit of an angle, and then the final 30 meters are down at a straight vertical drop. At the bottom of this cave was this opening where you could actually stand up and walk around, but there were no other tunnels to explore at the bottom, so you would just go down, touch the bottom, and go back up. The visibility inside of the shaft was limited because all you had was the light that was coming in, and because of how narrow the opening was, Jeff's body would obscure a lot of the sunlight coming in. So once Jeff got a few meters down into the tunnel, he would rely on his headlamp. So Jeff enters the cave and he makes his way down to the 20-meter mark. So that's where the tunnel goes from being on an angle to being straight. And he's about to make that final descent down that final 30 meters when he notices something out of the corner of his eye. And he focuses his light on the side of the shaft and he sees thousands of black widow spiders trying to escape the light. They're scattering all over the walls. And he looks around him and he realizes from his position down on the vertical section of the shaft is covered in black widow spiders. As much as Jeff wanted to stop right there and go right back up to the surface, he couldn't. In order to go back up this line that he was rappelling down on, he needed technical gear. And his technical gear was packed in his backpack, and it would just be totally unsafe trying to fish it out of his bag. And so he would have to descend the final 30 meters to the bottom, then take his pack off, get the gear out, and go back up. So Jeff took a deep breath, and he began his slow, awful descent into this cave filled with spiders. And periodically, as he would bump into the wall, he'd hear them scatter all over the walls, and then he saw them climbing on his sleeves, and he'd have to brush them off his sleeves. He saw them on the rope, he's trying to brush them off. He finally gets to the bottom, and he can hear the spiders on the wall just crawling all over the place. He takes his bag off, and it's covered in spiders. He opens it up, spiders crawl out of his bag. He carefully reaches in and pulls out his technical gear. He throws it up, and he begins making his way back up. And the whole time, he's just brushing spiders off of him. Once he gets to the surface, the first thing he does is he strips all of his clothing off to get all the spiders off of his clothing. He takes his bag, dumps it out, more spiders are in there. After he finally brushes all the spiders off, he redresses and gets in the car. And you can only imagine what the guide was thinking as he's watching this guy, this foreigner, taking his clothes off after being in this cave. But luckily, he doesn't get bit. He gets in the car with the guide, and they start heading back towards the city. As they're driving, he takes his notebook out, and he scratches off the title he had given this cave from the last time he was here, which was the Crooked Tube. He scratches that out, and on top of it, he writes, "The Entrance to Hell."
How I binge hours on Twitch without a single ad. Meet Pi, the ad blocker that actually works on Twitch, aka...
That was a short one, ha!
In 2006, a 14-year-old boy named Evan lived on a farm in North Carolina. This was not a typical farm with animals and crops. It was a pine tree harvestry. Pine needles are a big landscaping commodity, and Evan and his family made their living baling pine straw every year. As such, their main living house on the farm was situated right in the middle of 550 acres of perfectly lined up pine trees. They did not have any neighbors nearby, and there was only one road that led into the property, which from the main house, they could look out and basically see through the rows of trees all the way to the beginning of this road, which meant any visitors were really easy to spot. The main house was built on a very slight hill, which meant one side of the house was effectively built on stilts to compensate for the angle. And on that side of the house, on the first floor, was the living room. So anyone who was in the living room looking out the window, they'd basically need to look at a downward angle to see the ground. It would actually seem like you were on the second floor, but really you're on the first floor. The window in the living room was very unique. It stretched almost the entire length of the room, so almost 50 feet across. And at night, you could see animals darting between the different trees because you could see down the rows. And so that was pretty creepy. And then just the fact that this window is so big, if you're in the living room at night, you just felt really exposed. So between the creepy animals running around and the level of exposure and vulnerability, people basically avoided the living room anytime they were in the house at night. That winter, Evan's cousin came to stay with him on his farm, and because the main house did not have any extra bedrooms, Evan and his cousin would have to sleep in the living room. There were two couches inside of the living room, one that was right underneath the 50-foot-long window, and then another which was on the other side of the room against a wall that did not have a window. And so Evan would be sleeping on the couch right under the window, and his cousin would be sleeping on the other couch. The first night Evan's cousin was there, they put this big sheet up over the window, but it only blocked like 75% of the window. The two flanks of the window were still exposed, but where the couches were lined up, they were kind of blocked by this sheet, so it gave them a little bit of privacy. After goofing around for a while, the boys finally fell asleep around midnight, and then they woke up a couple hours later because they heard Evan's dogs barking way off in the pine trees. Now, Evan was used to his dogs running around the property and barking at other smaller animals, and so just them barking was not necessarily a red flag. But the barking persisted to the point where Evan's cousin got up off the couch, moved across the room to the opening of the window that was not covered by the sheet at the foot of where Evan was sleeping. Now, Evan was still laying on the couch. He was not going to get up and look out the window, so he's looking down at his cousin, kind of looking at his face face to get some sort of a read on what he's seeing. And he notices his cousin has this really perplexed look on his face, like he's squinting his eyes and trying to make sense of what he's looking at. And so Evan looks at him and says, "Hey, what's going on? What do you see?" And his cousin's like, "I don't know if my mind's playing tricks on me or not, but I'm pretty sure I see people out there." At this, Evan jumps off the couch and runs over and butts up right next to his cousin so he can look out the window too. And he's scanning out amongst the rows of trees because there's just a mile of pine trees. And the first thing he notices is the moon is very bright that night. So there's good illumination, and there was a light snow covering on the ground, which really added to the illumination. He's looking out maybe 100 meters when he sees someone's leg extend from behind one of the pine trees as if they're stepping into the space between a pine tree column. And he's staring at it, and he can't believe he's even seeing anyone walking around this area because he didn't see anybody come in on the road, and they have no neighbors. And so he's looking, and then a body follows the leg. A person walks from one row to the next. This tall, dark figure just walks calm as can be between the two pine trees. And Evan just grabs his cousin, and he's like, "Did you just see that?" And his cousin's like, "Yeah, I saw that." And so they continue to look in the direction of where this person crossed the path. And after a couple of minutes, they see another leg now emerging, going the other way, back towards where that first person had come from. So the leg kind of extends into this gap, and then this tall figure walks across into the next row, except now, instead of going just directly across, it looks like they're moving at an angle closer to the main house property. The boys look at each other and they don't know what to do, so they just keep looking out the window in stunned silence. And as they're looking, they see this person emerge again, except now they're not 100 meters away, they're like 20 meters away. They don't know how they were able to move that quickly without being seen. And this time when the leg comes out from behind the pine tree, instead of walking across the gap, it stops right in the middle, and it turns and it looks directly at the boys in the window and then begins running toward them. The boys practically fall over trying to get away from the window. Evan's yelling for his father upstairs, and the boys instinctively just start running around the house, locking every door, shutting every window. And as they're going from door to door, the anxiety is growing and growing because they think, if I don't get there fast enough, this person who is running towards the property is going to come barging through that door. And so at every door, their anxiety is through the roof, but they manage to shut everything. Everything is locked right as Evan's father comes charging down the stairs. He's got his gun in hand and he's like, "What's going on?" And they say, "There's someone out in our property." Their dad charges out the front door. The front door is not on the same wall as the living room. It's on the side of the house. So once he goes outside, he's going to need to turn to the right to look out in the direction they were describing. He bombs outside, he stays on the porch, and he starts yelling at whoever's out there that if you come over here, I'm going to shoot you, get the F away from here. And then there's silence. And the boys are waiting, they're looking around, they're checking the window. They don't see anything. The dad comes back inside, he shut and locks the door, and he tells Evan, "Keep an eye out. If you see him again, you let me know." Evan would reflect on this experience later on and say, we really should have called 911 at that point. But as a kid, I just understood that that's the way my family did business. We kind of took care of ourselves. And so even though there is a threat of some stranger who's running at our property, we were not going to call the cops. And so his dad effectively was telling him to be a lookout. And so Evan and his cousin, they go back into the living room and they kind of go up to the window. They're a little bit apprehensive and they're looking out. And after 5-10 minutes of looking out the window and not seeing anything, they're thinking to themselves, Evan's dad's a pretty intimidating guy, and he was just out there screaming and yelling with a gun, threatening to shoot them. So they probably got the message and they're probably gone. And so the boys got back into their couches, and it took them a while, but they did ultimately fall asleep. The next morning when the boys got up, the first thing they wanted to do was go out there and see if they could find footprints from this person to kind of confirm it really was a person, because part of them thought, maybe we didn't see that. Maybe that was our imaginations. They don't know. And so they start by going out the front door, so not on the same wall as the living room. They go out the front door, they turn, and they walk down into the trees. And they're looking around and they find some footprints. So they're confirming to themselves, okay, there was someone out here. It wasn't us. This is not our footprints. We found them. So they start following the footprints back towards the property. And they realize at some point there are two distinct sets of footprints. There were two people out here. And even worse is they followed them all the way up to the house. And there were two different circles of footprints that stopped right underneath the living room window along the two flanks of the window where the sheet was not covering. Which means over the course of the night, when Evan and his cousin were up at that window looking out, there's a good chance that one or two strangers were tucked up against the side of the house. and they would not have seen them because of the angle out of the living room window. It was steep because of the stilts it was on. And so anybody that was tucked up along the side, they'd be in a blind spot. And then for sure, after Evan and his cousin got back into bed and were sleeping, there were two strangers who were right up against those windows, probably pulling themselves up to look inside. When Evan's father found these footprints, he immediately grabbed his gun and tried to follow them back into the woods to see where they came from, but unfortunately the snow cover wasn't complete, and at some point they lost the tracks and they never figured out who those two people were. Evan would say, following this event, his cousin refused to ever come back over his house for a sleepover.
One of the coolest things about
come
ZZZ
on,
is the
again.
environments and how real they feel. For example, if you go to Lumina,
A woman in black. What? Okay.
In October of 2005, a 21-year-old named Nathan was back home in Elk Grove, California, visiting his mother at her apartment for a couple of days. Her apartment was part of this really safe complex. It was gated. There's lots of lights and cameras. So anything that went bump in the night was just going to be, your noisy neighbors or something. On the last night of Nathan's stay, he was laying in his bed in the guest room, listening to the hum of the street lamp that was outside and the crickets and the passing by of cars when he drifted off to sleep.
Oh, wait a minute. Actually, I watched this before. I watched that. I know I watched that part before. I don't need to watch it again, because I'll tell you what it's about. It's a sleep paralysis. So, now you know. So now, yeah, that's Mr. Ballin. And Mr. Ballin had two chances. Well, one half chances of being twice. Now, Nuke's Top 5's next. We're watching his newest video 6 hours ago. 38 minutes. That's a steal. Nuke's Top 5.
Late one night, Sarah Vargas is relaxing at home in the apartment that she shares with her dad in Colombia. Suddenly, she hears something from the apartment next door that is truly bizarre.
What? No, are you? Oh, so there was an argument? What's going on? What's happening?
Disturbing, desperate screams can be heard coming from her neighbor's apartment. Shocked witnesses on the street are quick to call police, worried that it might be a case of domestic violence. But then the story takes a very strange turn, because the policeman asked people down on the street for rosary beads, an object often used in Catholic prayer. And then, oddly, police call in a Catholic nun for support.
Siguieron, obviamente, como que llamaron a alguien, llamaron a una monja para que les ayudara.
Because you see, all of this noise is actually coming from an exorcism that is taking place right next door. Sarah discovers that two girls were playing around with the Ouija board, when suddenly, one of the girls becomes very violent and starts vomiting up some kind of dark matter, almost like dirt.
La chica empezó como a vomitar tierra, como vomitar oscuro.
The family believes that the girl might be possessed by an evil entity, and apparently, the police agreed. Sarah says that the screaming went on all through the night, eventually getting quieter in the early morning hours until it finally stopped. Now, without other eyewitness reports, it's hard to say exactly what happened here. but the desperate screams coming from that apartment are absolutely chilling.
Is a healer.
Oh my
He's got
god!
his big,
So many ads!
sniper rifle. He's got his big.
Amsterdam. Jennifer Lee is an American woman who lives in the city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. One day, a couple of weeks ago, she was recording a cute Halloween photo shoot with her rescue dog Maggie in a large Amsterdam public park. But suddenly, something happens that spooks both Jennifer and her dog.
You gonna make the best dirty ghost? You gonna make the best dirty ghost? Whoa. Oh my god.
That might be a skinwalker.
Is he okay?
Skinwalker?
Are you okay? Alles gut?
Skinwalker or ghost? I don't know.
What was supposed to be a fun little photo for Halloween turns into a living nightmare when Jennifer hears loud screaming and yelling coming from somewhere in or near the large park.
You gonna make the best dirty ghost? Whoa.
Jennifer says that she searched the area for the source of the bizarre wailing, worried that someone might be in trouble or experiencing a mental health crisis. She even contacted local police.
So my first reaction when I hear someone screaming like that is I want to go to help them. And additionally, I used to be an EMT. So like when I hear someone screaming like that, I want to help if I'm able to. So logically, I understand that everyone was like, you should leave. I would have left. But also like, I don't know, it makes me wonder if that was me screaming in the woods, would anyone have come for me? Like no one else stopped. No one else.
Unfortunately, no one was found. So the creepy screaming remains a mystery to this day. The White Lichen Bothy. If you hike an hour into the remote countryside of Scotland, you can find the old 18th century White Lichen Bothy, a mountain cabin that's free to use for travelers. The creepy old cabin has no electricity, no running water, and perhaps most disturbing of all, there are no locks on any of the doors. Over the years, hundreds of travelers have visited the White Lichen Bothy, and many of these visitors claim to have had strange, unexplained experiences while staying there. A few outdoor and travel YouTube channels have visited the White Lichen Bothy as well, and most have experienced at least something a little weird while staying there.
I'm really quite scared of it staying here, to be honest. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it really will be fine.
Again, let me stress that all of the following videos were recorded by travel and outdoor channels. None of these people are ghost hunters, and in fact, every one of these YouTubers say they don't even believe in ghosts at all.
I mean, I don't particularly believe in ghosts, neither does mine.
But they also can't explain what they experienced at the White Lichen Bothy.
Today, I'm going to be staying in a bothy in Scotland for the first ever time.
First up, seasoned solo traveler Ruth Asling spent a night in the old Scottish cabin, and she found it a bit unnerving.
So, I don't know why I'm feeling a little bit anxious, because I've stayed in a camper van so many times in different countries. I feel like here is just so remote, and to get away, you have to hike over 1 hour, like to get back to the camper van. So maybe that's why. And also there's no locks. So on my camper van, I always lock the doors. Maybe that's also why. I don't know. Oh God. I'm hearing some strange noises. I don't know if it's maybe a mouse or it's the chimney. It feels really weird without curtains because I feel like someone could be standing outside and looking in the window. I don't know, I feel really scared. I don't know why.
Someone could be at the window. Someone could
Ruth
be there.
stays the full night at the cabin, but she doesn't exactly get a restful sleep.
Last night I was a bit scared. There were some strange noises and I had some earplugs with me, so I put them in to block out the strange noises. God, I'm still hearing weird noises.
Throughout the night, while completely alone, Ruth keeps hearing bizarre noises that creep her out. And oddly, she decides to just ignore the strange sounds and put in earplugs, which kinda seems like a bad idea when you're staying all alone in a cabin in the middle of nowhere and there are no locks on the doors. But to each their own.
Bye-bye, Buffy.
Next up, a camper that goes by the name Happy Hippie, who says that he does not believe in ghosts or the paranormal, has a similar creepy experience.
I've set up my bed for the night. Gonna get the fire on when it gets darker. This will probably be me for most of the night now. I just get my music on, enjoy this beautiful fire, and then get back outside tomorrow in my hammock. I got one of them water filter straws, and it comes with 2 little bags as well, so you can attach the straw to that. But I've not got to use. Maybe this is the guests. There was no one there. I don't know if that's just the people with me or something. I don't know if that's something they do. But I don't think it would be that family. It was just a dad and his daughter and son. Oh well, we'll see. It was just knocking on the door again, and then I went out, but there was no one there. So I don't know what's going on, but I've not heard of any haunted bobbies or anything. I've never had weird shit. Just wanted a nice little bobby night. If you've watched all my videos before, you know I don't do like this. This is gonna be a fun night. And they're walking around in the other room, and then I go in there, and it just stops. Maybe I just put my music on really loud and forget about it. Yeah, cameraman never dies, right?
The Happy Hippie spends the night in the cabin, but the next day, he still can't explain just what happened.
Good morning. Had a bit of an experience last night. Couldn't really explain what was happening next door with the noises, but I'm not really a believer in ghosts myself. It was a bit creepy, but I'm more of an alien guy. But if you are into ghosts and all that paranormal stuff, these are not the videos for you, because this is not what I do. This is not what I'm about. I'm just a happy hippie, hiking, living in nature, loving the world. I never have anything like this happen to me, so...
So now this next video is by far the creepiest footage ever recorded in the White Lagoon Bothy.
We're at a place called White Lagoon Bothy.
It was shot by Ben and Martin from the YouTube channels Adventure Outdoors and What's Not to Hike.
So we're in the Bothy. There's nobody else here.
The two men travel to the White Lagoon Bothy together, and they experience something that is truly terrifying.
Found the Bothy book. You can put my glasses on now, because mine's a bat. So this is popular, quite a popular Bothy by the looks of it. Someone actually stayed last night. It was nice and tidy when we came in. So plaudits to whoever stayed here last night. Well done. Absolutely spotless. Whoa. Hold on a minute. Whoa. I'm out. I'm out of here. No.
It's getting late when a door suddenly slams shut all on its own.
That was totally weird. The door just started to move on its own. And then it just pretty much slammed shut. I mean, Marty's out there,
I don't really want to come back in.
He's in bits. That was just the weirdest thing, wasn't it?
Now the two friends are both skeptics, but they are still a little unnerved by what just happened.
But that was terrifying, and I don't even swear. I'm swearing, but I don't. But that was genuinely terrifying. I shot myself when it slammed. I just wanted out of here. There's something really, because I say it doesn't feel creepy. It doesn't feel like you're in the presence or anything. As I say, we don't really believe that stuff. There might be, stuff we can't explain, whatever. But we just don't believe in the whole ghosty, spooks in the night kind of thing. Just don't. But that was genuinely terrifying, and I'm going to keep that door. I'm keeping it closed.
Little do they know that things are about to get even weirder.
Well, folks, it's probably about 10 minutes after our ordeal with the spooky door closing over there, and we're trying to rationalise it. I mean, I don't particularly believe in ghosts, neither does Mom. No. So we're kind of thinking that it might have been just like the backdraft of the wind. I mean, there's a storm going on outside, so
yeah. But I still don't believe it was the wind, but it's the only when the wind's blowing that strong outside, and there's no, it's the only rational explanation, even though I'm not even looking at that. No, I'm not looking at it. It's moving, right? I'm honest, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go.
This can't be right.
I'm not. It's black in here as well. I can't see a thing.
So there's a chair over there, and it just started to move, which is
no way. I'm not even. No.
This is bonkers.
I'm not having any part of this.
That is moving.
Jesus Christ.
It is moving, that chair is moving.
Just leave it.
Oh, Christ. Oh, well, I'm gonna drink some more wine, I think. Christ.
No, that's poltergeist shit, all that. That's poltergeist stuff. That's not ghosty. That's like evil spirit stuff.
Chair sitting in the corner of the room inexplicably starts to slide across the floor on its own. And these two diehard skeptics suddenly begin to wonder if they might be dealing with some sort of paranormal entity. But now a little nervous, they finish out their night's stay in the other room and head out the next day. Now I want to point out again that the White Lagan Bothy has never been investigated by any ghost hunting team or ghost hunting YouTube channel. All of the footage shown here today was captured by outdoor explorers and campers that have never posted any video related to the paranormal before these clips. So is the White Lagan Bothy haunted? And would you dare to spend a night there? Let me know.
Pi isn't just an ad blocker, it gets you paid.
Oh, really? With Pi, you can see the ads vanish in real.
It's cold outside, but you can keep warm in some all-new Nuke Stop 5 merch. Now, of course, we have t-shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs. But we also have blankets, pillows, and long sleeves. We've even got stockings and wrapping paper. Anyway, shipping is free, and be sure to order by December 10th to get delivery before Christmas. Go to nukestop5.com to shop now. Or, whenever you feel like it. Maybe after the video. Passerby. A family is parked in a neighborhood in Buenos Aires, Argentina, when suddenly they notice something very odd in the house across the street.
Ay, beso.
No, no es normal eso.
No.
Something that looks like a person appears to quickly move back and forth across a room on the second floor. The mysterious figure seems to move at an inhuman speed and quickly changes direction. It seems to move without effort, almost as if it is floating past the window.
Porque no es como que caminamos y se desliza. Sí, porque no es que sube y baja así del...
The family dog is very anxious and pants as the family watches the window, trying to figure out just what it is that they're seeing. So what do you think this is moving back and forth at such a fast speed? Let me know. Watcher. German urban explorer Toby from the YouTube channel Unknown Worlds is traveling through Sweden when he finds an old abandoned house in the middle of the woods. It's getting late, but Toby decides to investigate the creepy old house. It did not go well.
Is somebody in here? Do you speak English? Jag talar inte svenska. Oh mein Gott.
Ach du Scheiße. Ach du Scheiße. Oh mein Gott. Oh mein Gott. Oh Scheiße. Oh mein Gott. Oh mein Gott. Das kann doch nur ein Mensch gewesen sein. Ach du Scheiße.
As Toby looks inside one of the bedrooms, he spots someone in his thermal imaging camera who is just staring right back at him. Understandably, Toby is freaked out. He just makes a run for it out of the house and drives away. Later, when Toby uploads his video to his YouTube channel, viewers point out that the creepy stranger might have been watching him even before he entered the house.
Wollen wir erstmal durch die Wärmebildkamera gucken, ob wir hier eventuell jetzt schon etwas sehen. So, ja. Das sieht jetzt natürlich nicht so vertrauenserweckend aus. Laut Wärmebildkamera ist es an den ganzen Öffnungen vom Haus sehr viel wärmer als draußen. Zumindest laut den Farben. Gucken wir jetzt aber mal explizit, sehen wir, an den Kaltstellen sind es 7 Grad und an den warmen sind es 9. Das heißt, es könnte eventuell auch ein Trugschluss sein. Ich werde jetzt hier erstmal gucken.
Now, I think it's safe to say that going into an abandoned house all by yourself is always a bad idea. Not because of ghosts, but because of something scarier and much more dangerous. Real people who might be inside and who really don't want you there. Thankfully, Toby made it home safe, but this disturbing situation could have turned out much worse.
Welcome to jail, Smurf. Wait, put me in that cell. Huh? This cell is for VIP Hero Wars.
Play dead. Trent Williams is away on a trip with a friend and staying at an old Airbnb cabin on Skaneateles Lake in upstate New York. Once they arrive, the two friends realize that the cabin has a pretty dark history.
Okay, I usually do not, or I never have believed in like haunted stuff, okay? But I'm out at Skaneateles Lake, the Fingers Lakes in upstate New York. And the Airbnb I'm staying at, the guy did say, just FYI, we do have people say that they hear a piano play at night. And I thought it was bullshit. And I swear to God, I've heard it. It plays. There's a walk over here. So in case I die, I have a documentation of it, okay? It's an old house. It's on a beautiful lake, though. But I did find out the guy who owns the place, daughter died in a car wreck, and her ashes are on the piano. God, I get chills, but that's the piano, and it plays at night, and it freaks me out. I have chill bumps just being in this room. I do not get a good vibe.
With a creepy story like that, it's no wonder that the two guys get a little bit freaked out when late at night they start to hear random keys playing on the piano in the living room.
Yeah, I can't do this shit. It's so scary.
No, you go in there with me.
Yes. You have to go first.
Just stay behind me. You. It keeps playing, I swear. No, dude, I'm not going up in that. It's this piano, I swear to God it is. No, dude, you got me up. If I die, I swear, I will. Oh, God. Dude, no.
Now, when you first watch the video, you might think, oh well, no big deal, that could easily be faked. But here is what makes this video so compelling. Because you see, when you look closely, the played piano key is actually pressed down by something. Now, this is not to say that this footage is quote-unquote proof of the paranormal, but it does make this video much harder to fake. So could this creepy Airbnb cabin be haunted by the spirit of the owner's daughter? Or is it all just an elaborate hoax? You decide.
Dude, no.
Before we move on to the next video, if you see anything that you think should be included in the top 5, contact us at nukestop5@gmail.com. Rude Awakening. A Nukes Top 5 viewer who wishes to remain anonymous is hanging out at her friend's house. The girls were freaked out when they noticed something very odd. A few plastic packages of candle melt suddenly seemed to be moving on their own. One of the girls quickly whips out her camera and tries to record the strange activity, but then it just stops. However, the girl keeps recording as they, impolitely, try to convince whatever spirit might be present to continue moving the packages. And then this happens.
So let's just continue talking and then hopefully what do you guys think? I don't know. Now it's not gonna do it. For real?
No, you don't know that.
What are you gonna do?
Alex.
When they gently try to convince their quote-unquote poltergeist to move the plastic containers, it doesn't work. So one of the girls turns into a potty mouth, and the ghosts don't like it.
That's not gonna do it. For real?
No, you don't know that.
What are you gonna do?
Alex.
Now, just like these girls, if you caught something weird on camera, send it to me at nukestop5@gmail.com. Reflections. An elderly man with no living relatives was living alone in an old apartment building somewhere in Japan. A few months ago, the man, who we'll call Mr. A, suddenly began to exhibit very strange behavior, complaining to his landlord that there was, quote, a strange woman in his home trying to take his life. The landlord was worried about Mr. A's mental health and advised him to go see a doctor. But instead, Mr. A vowed that he would collect proof that what he was experiencing was very real. Not long after, Mr. A tragically took his own life. So, Mr. A's landlord inspects his apartment and finds several videotapes recorded on a very old camera. Out of curiosity, he watches the tapes, and what he sees chills him to his core. This terrifying footage was recorded one day before Mr. A's death. A bizarre, distorted figure can be seen in the reflection of the dresser mirror, and the landlord now wonders if Mr. A truly did experience something paranormal inside his apartment. The landlord contacts the Japanese ghost hunting team, Omagatoki, and paranormal investigator Hiro sets out on a solo overnight investigation into the allegedly haunted apartment. Eventually, Hiro finds the room that can be seen on the disturbing videotapes. The investigator finds the dresser seen in the old camera footage, but the mirror is gone. A few hours later, and Hiro finally finds the missing mirror. What happens next is downright creepy.
I see it. There's a room.
I hate ads so much, I've dedicated my entire career to getting rid of them. My name is Brandon Moore.
As Hiro is cutting zip ties and carefully unwrapping the mirror, someone suddenly rings the apartment doorbell. And there's no one there. But, did you see it? Hiro is completely unaware that he's being watched as he's unpacking the mirror. And the figure watching him looks exactly like the disturbing entity from Mr. A's grainy home video. Hiro tries using Mr. A's old camera in an attempt to capture anything resembling what Mr. A recorded the day before his death. What happens next is terrifying. Hiro finds another tape dumped in the trash. But again, did you see it? When slowed down for just a few frames of the footage, two little pale hands can be seen pressed against the floor right beside Hiro. He doesn't even notice and is still completely unaware of the entity that seems to be watching and following him. Hiro decides to watch the tape that he recovered from the trash, and it makes his blood run cold. The camera seems to spin around by itself before the same weird distorted face can be seen peeking out at the very bottom of a doorway.
Oh, yeah.
Creeped out by the footage, Hiro decides to leave. He thinks that he didn't capture any kind of proof that Mr. A's apartment is haunted. But when he reviews his footage later, he realizes that the entire time he was in the apartment, the same eerie entity was watching him. You can see this entire investigation over on the YouTube channel, Omagatoki Film. Scary moments. These next creepy videos are a little different from what I usually feature, because they are definitely scary videos and very entertaining in my opinion, but they are also just kind of silly. So, a man wakes up his grandpa after he hears the unsettling sound of someone whistling downstairs in their home. What happens next is, well, just watch.
Tranquilo, mijo. Deja ver qué pasa. El Señor está con nosotros. No tengas miedo. Deja ver qué pasa. Deja ir a ver.
Abuelo.
Cálmate, cálmate, cálmate.
Estás en el cielo, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga a nosotros tu reino. Hágase su voluntad. ¡Ay! ¡Abuelo! ¡Abuelo! ¡Ay! ¡Ay! ¡Ábrele, ábrele! A ver quién es. ¡Ábrele, ábrele! ¡Ábrele!
No pasa nada. No pasa nada.
¡Ay, abuelo!
No hay nada, no hay nada.
A ver, ve, fíjate. Ve, fíjate. ¡Ay! ¡Otra vez, abuelo! ¡Es un pinche mono! ¡Abuelo! ¡Ciérrale, ciérrale, ciérrale, ciérrale! ¡Llámale a la policía! ¡Saca tu teléfono! Tengo miedo.
This guy is absolutely petrified when he spots someone peeking from around the wall at the bottom of the stairs. And in a strange twist, he just pushes his grandpa out to go check it out. Now, this clip was originally suggested to me as a scary video for the top 5. But when I watch it with all of that crazy screaming, it just makes me laugh.
¡Ay! ¡Otra vez, abuelo! ¡Es un pinche mono! ¡Abuelo! ¡Ciérrale, ciérrale, ciérrale, ciérrale! ¡Llámale a la policía!
And I also learned some Spanish. Es el pinche de mono, abuelo. But I'm not sure where I'll ever be able to use that. Anyway, in another very odd clip, a group of women are walking home late at night when they get the scare of a lifetime. All alone on an empty city street, the women are terrified when they hear the strange and horrifying sound of a loud burp. And they just make a run for it.
That's hilarious.
And if a vacuum isn't scary enough for you, then what about the evil betrayal of your own feet?
So there's this. No way. You're done.
I love it. Oh, that's kind of creepy, but luckily it is the end of this live stream. Hope you guys enjoyed the live stream. It was kind of pretty funny and kind of a little scary. But I'll see you guys in the next stream. Bye bye.